He wasn't a very good swimmer. We can go now, dear.
Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Triple R. I'm CW, along with co-host Bradley Lynch. Today, joining us, we have a good friend of ours, LC Holt. We're going to discuss the Friday the 13th, 1980 original versus the 2009 reboot. How you doing, guys?
Not too bad.
Good.
It's good. Let's jump right into it. It's Friday the 13th, 1980. Directed by, produced by Sean S. Cunningham. Written by Victor Miller. Budget for the film, $550,000, and at the box office, they hauled in $59.8 million. Little summary on the plot. Basically, it's 1958, Camp Crystal Lake. Little boy, Jason Voorhees, drowns, and his mama, Mrs. Voorhees, does not like it. She goes on a killing spree and starts killing some counselors. A quick little rundown on some of the cast. We got Betsy Palmer as Miss Voorhees. We got Adrienne King as Alice. We got Harry Crosby as Bill. We got Jeannie Taylor as Marcy. We got Kevin Bacon as Jack. And of course, towards the end of the film, we got Ari Lehman as Jason.
Yeah, that's an interesting cast. You know, Harry Crosby was related to Bing Crosby.
Oh,
Not a lot of people know that, actually.
I did not.
I think it was his son.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was his claim to fame as a Crosby.
Well, I did not know he had any relation to Bing. That's very interesting.
The more you know.
The more you know.
That's right. Yeah. Great cast.
Great. It was a great cast, and such a great film for such a small budget. Well, I say small budget compared to today's standards, but they had a small budget and hauled in almost $60 million. They done good with what they had.
They done pretty good for themselves, yeah.
Yeah, they really did.
Yeah, it's not bad for a movie that was basically named after. I mean, it was written after the title. You know, the title came first.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, what can we do with Friday the 13th? Halloween was a success."
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Try to piggyback off of that.
Yeah, that's what they did, and to great success. That movie made a ton of money and spawned how many sequels? I lost count.
Yeah, right.
I think. Yeah.
So the good, the bad, the ugly on this, guys. I mean, where do you stand on the good of the original?
There's a lot of good in there. I mean, the special effects for the time, that was amazing. And like you said earlier, you had an amazing cast. You had Kevin Bacon, for one. I mean, the first time I seen that movie, I watched that for Kevin Bacon. And then all of a sudden when he died, I was devastated, right?
And the cool thing about Kevin Bacon, too, is that he has a great perspective on it. You know, he'll talk about it, and he's even done, you remember he did that commercial where he had the arrow coming out of his throat?
That's right.
And that was a few years back. So he's not one of these guys. It's always nice to see somebody who appreciates, kind of like Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street, appreciates where he started.
That's
even
right.
though it's gone on to great acclaim. Kevin Bacon has a really good attitude about this movie, and why shouldn't he?
That's right. Brought him to where he was, or is.
Very true.
Yeah.
So he would not have been footloose and fancy free if not for Friday the 13th.
Or running away from giant underground worms.
That's right. With that hair. Whoa, that hair.
That hair, yeah. So, Bradley, what did you like about the original? What was the good for you?
Oh, man. All the kills, the way they were executed. For me, mostly, I was a big special effects hound, I really loved watching how everything was done. And Tom Savini growing up was a hero for me, right? I loved seeing how everything was put together and how it was all made. I couldn't wait to see special features when I rebought the DVD years later. And then I was disappointed because on the DVD there was no special features. So,
yeah. Have you ever read Tom Savini's book Grand Illusion?
No.
He goes through it. I wish I had it where I could grab it, but I've had it for years. And it's a book that goes through, I can't remember what film it ends with, but it has Dawn of the Dead. It has all of his early work as a special effects guy. It has Friday the 13th, The Prowler, a bunch of others. And he goes through and gives you pictures and diagrams of stuff, of how he did everything and tells stories.
Yeah.
If you can find Grand Illusion, I would suggest it, especially a Tom Savini fan, because it's a pretty cool book, just in terms of the behind the scenes stuff, and it goes through every effect on this movie, how he did it, shows you diagrams of how it was set up and stuff. Real interesting.
Here we are. I like the idea, man, that it was based on a very real premise in a way. A little boy, her son, drowns. She took exception to the fact that the counselors weren't there to watch him, and she takes matters into her own hands. I mean, it's not that far-fetched.
No, it can happen.
It can happen. It can happen
really realistically, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it is a murder mystery, which, unlike the films that followed, it's the one that is a whodunit. From then on out, you know who did it.
That's
it's
right.
Just how is he going to do it to the next person?
Yeah.
And this movie had that murder mystery. It was almost like Agatha Christie at a summer camp. It was like what was that? 10 Little Indians, where each person gets killed off one at a time, only at a summer camp. Pretty neat concept. And you also had that thing where you didn't know who the star was going to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Psycho kind of thing, where you think Annie at the beginning is going to be the star. Annie who doesn't like calling people kids and then calls people kids, which is always a funny. I don't know if that was intentional or a. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where she's like, I hate it when people call them kids, and then the next scene with her, she's like, I'm going to be cooking for 10 kids,
right?
Or whatever,
All right, so let's get into some of the bad about it. What did LC? We'll start with you this time.
You did have the sort of the goofiness of it. There's some stuff that didn't age well in terms of the jokes and the dialogue and stuff. You go, oof, man. At the time, contemporaneously, I'm sure it was funny and topical, but some of those things didn't age well. And I've always been a little bit of a I've always been a little bit iffy about the hydrocephalic head. That Jason looked quite that deformed. It looks a little weird. I remember there was a story Tom Savini said about when Betsy Palmer saw a picture of what Jason was going to look like. She said, "Who is that?" And he said, "Well, that's your son." She was like, "Oh, really?" Because she just thought it was a little boy, just a normal boy. So, I mean, those are two things that pop into mind. One of them can be easily excused as just being, is dated. Some of the dialogue and jokes are sort of dated with time. But I don't know. The hydrocephalic head still kind of looks a little odd.
Right.
And the one phony little eye.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm with LC there. I mean, that's my biggest gripe. Some of the stuff didn't age very well at all. I mean, makeup-wise, yeah. And it's a contradiction to what I said before, how Tom Savini was great and all that, but then some of those effects today are, pretty lacking.
Yeah. All right, so battle about the ugly. We're after doing the good and the bad, so let's hit on the ugly of it all. Bradley?
Yeah, okay. For me, the ugly, well, the minute that she was discovered, I'm talking about Mrs. Voorhees, and everyone knew this old lady was the killer, she turned into an old lady. She wasn't stealthy anymore. She wasn't strong anymore. She couldn't do all these things that she was doing before. And man, oh man, she just really slowed down when they found out who she was. That was pretty well it for me, right? That was my worst thing about that.
Well, and too, she gets real chatty with Alice.
Yeah.
And theoretically, she didn't say anything to the rest of them when she murdered them. So, how does Mrs. Palmer know that Alice is going to be the final girl? That now I'm going to sit here and tell you everything that happened. I didn't tell any of the rest of them, but you're a special victim.
Yeah, so I'm going to monologue to you now.
Right, yeah. That always kind of goes to what Bradley was saying. I always kind of scratch my head on that. I mean, story-wise, script-wise, it's totally understandable because this is the point in the movie when you explain why the killer is doing this.
Yeah.
But if you just think about it in context of the story, it's a little odd that all of a sudden, for this girl, for some reason, she's going to explain her plot instead of just killing her like she did everybody else.
That's right.
We go ahead,
Go
Brett.
ahead. No, you go.
Oh, we had a friend of ours actually send in. I wouldn't really say it's a viewer question, but a viewer comment. Bradley, you wanna shoot that out there?
Yeah. What he was wondering basically was if she worked alone in this first film, because I mean some of those kills were pretty elaborate. Where I can't remember the character, but he was pinned to the back of the door. Right?
Yeah, that was the Harry Crosby character.
Yeah.
Bill.
That's right. Yeah, that's what it was, Bill. And the other one, like where she had the body on top of the bunk bed before they killed Kevin Bacon off. Like she was a feeble old lady, but she was able to pin a 200-pound man to the back of a door and take a dead body and put it on top of a bunk bed. Right?
Yeah, and Steve Christie.
That's right. Yeah,
She hung him upside down from a tree, didn't she?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I mean, little things.
She's a strong old gal. That.
Yeah, until the end.
Yeah.
Maybe she ran out of steam.
Yeah, she has real hairy hands at the end too.
Yes.
Almost make you wonder: was Jason actually really dead?
Well, and two, I think when we go into the remake, that's definitely those exact things are addressed in the remake.
Yeah.
Not really addressed in this because obviously this was meant to be a one-off with no Jason ever in the future, other than
that's
being
right.
matched. Yeah. But I guess if you want to retroactively go back and rewrite the story a little bit, retcon it a little bit, considering what came later, then you could say, oh, well, Jason maybe was always there.
Yeah.
Because he's certainly an adult a few years later.
That's right. He would have been like 33 years old or something. So
Yeah.
Easily could have been there.
From the time frame on like, yeah, he would have been like 33, full-grown adult.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and in part two, which happens just a few years later, he's certainly not a little boy with a big head.
No.
Yeah, no.
A big boy with a big head now.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
A lot of hair, too. Big beard. Hella beard.
All right, so let's tear into the 2009 rundown there a little bit. So, 2009, Friday the 13th, directed by Marcus Nispel, produced by Sean S. Cunningham, Michael Bay jumped on board, Andrew Form and Brad Fuller came on board for this one. Budget was $19 million, and the box office pulled in $92.7 million. Not a bad day's work. And the plot: on June 13th, 1980, a young Jason Voorhees, played by Caleb Gus, watches his mother Pamela get beheaded by a camp counselor. And then he decides to take matters into his own hands and go on a teetotal rampage. Tear into it. What'd you like about it, Brad?
I liked the design of Jason for the most part. I loved Derek Mears' character. The things I didn't like about it, I'll get into a little later. But the special effects were decent. Right? The creativity, well, that was something to be desired. For some of the kills were like, yeah, you can see them coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I like Marcus Nespel's style because he had just previously done for Platinum Dunes, the Texas Chainsaw reboot.
Yeah.
I think he has an extra visual style that's interesting. They're beautiful movies to watch in a lot of ways, especially the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot, which I think is shot, and the same cinematographer too, Dan Pearl, and it was shot, wonderfully. A lot of these kind of movies can be brought up to another level simply by having a good cinematographer, somebody who can shoot the light streaming through the trees in just the right way, and you go, wow, that looks far better than this movie should look,
Yeah.
But I mean, and structurally, I don't know if you mentioned the writer of this is the same guy that wrote, or the same duo that wrote Freddy vs. Jason.
Yes.
Damian Shannon, and I think Mark Swift.
Mark Swift and Damian Shannon, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And they did some interesting stuff with the script. I was always a big fan of the little movie before the movie. You know, there's like a 23-minute prologue before you even see the title card. And I'm sitting there watching it like, wow, when are the credits? Is, you know, because you have that opening scene with the head credits, but there's no title, and then you go into this whole little mini movie about these obnoxious teenagers that go off into the woods looking for weed, and it plays out like its own short film.
Yeah,
and
I
then
like that. I like that first crowd better.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, the second crowd, yeah. I mean, the like Travis Van Winkle character is pretty funny, but then you also, you know, being the guy that's afraid to have his house ruined, right. But then you also have, you know, some characters that fall into, okay, we're going to play up to this stereotype, which is a little, you know, I could have done without that, because you see that too much in these kind of movies. You know, why can't they just be a good character and not be the token whatever kind of character?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, but I don't want to get into what I didn't like yet, because that's to come.
That's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the cast-wise, we had Jared Padalecki. You know, we had Danielle Panabaker.
Who I love.
Amanda Ridley.
Sweetheart.
There we go. Travis Van Winkle. Aaron Wu. Or Yu. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that last name. Would it be Yoou?
That sounds right. He's basically playing the exact same character he played in Disturbia.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a fun little character, though.
Yeah, and you know that he is a lot older than the other actors. He looks young.
Yeah.
But I think these days he's like in his 40s.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And this time around, we had Pamela Voorhees was Nana Vister, and we had Derek Mears as Jason, and the young Jason was Caleb Gus. Personally, I liked the little spin difference on Mears's version. A couple of little things, gripes that I weren't fussy on was him running. I don't picture Jason running after you. He's going to cut you off with a shortcut. And
that's something we could mention too, the shortcut, because that is explained for the first time in this movie.
Yeah. Yes, they do touch base on it, and Bradley has a little gripe about that, I would imagine.
No.
I hate it.
He's not a fan of the tunnels.
No, I can't stand it.
One thing I do have to bring up before we get into the bad about it all is it was different to see a character like Jared Padalecki. I mean, finally we get a character about the same size as Jason.
Yeah.
You know, Jared's what, 6'5", 6'6"?
Yeah.
He's a big guy.
I mean, I was rewatching it the other day for this show, and you know, he was up for Superman at one point in the films, and I was thinking, man, he would have been a good Superman.
Yeah.
He's got the height, the look, big guy.
He is a very big guy. All right, Bradley, you want to start on the bad about it all, bud?
Well, we just talked a little bit about it. Was the tunnels? I hate those tunnels. I know they tried to base it in reality instead of having him just teleport everywhere, but like those tunnels, but I just couldn't wrap my head around that. That pissed me off to no end. And then like another thing, including with the tunnels, is like the camp, the house, the farm. It's all into one backyard.
Yeah. What did you think too? I mean, I remember when I was watching it thinking, okay, so they have this extremely nice mansion on the lake. Down on the south side, they have a dock with a nice boat on it. These people, not only did a crew build that house, but this family has been living in that house theoretically on the summers long enough to have fun boat outings on the lake. And I'm like, exactly. Jason never got mad at any of this. They seem to be the only people living on the lake, and yet he's allowed them to have a pass until this one night when that really pisses him off for some reason. And he goes over and is like, you know what, that house I keep talking about, I'm going to take it out tonight. And everybody in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seemed like 15 or 20 feet into the woods, no matter what direction they went, they could stumble upon Jason's cabin.
Yeah.
And we all know from the original, even in the video game, his cabin is secluded in the woods. You know, it's off to itself. It's not close to Camp Crystal Lake per se. or whatever. I just find it strange that, like yourself, I mean, all these years went by, the woman answers the door. He just wants to be left alone.
Right.
She knew about him.
Yeah.
But he didn't do nothing to her. The guy that owned the wood chipping place.
Mm-hmm.
All these years, Jason didn't bother this guy chipping wood, and all of a sudden he's come on.
Yeah, and the old man in the wrecker.
Right?
And who I assume is the guy that, because remember when the dude is over there chipping wood, he's talking about this is so and so's place. I assume the guy with the wrecker is the guy that employs the wood chipping dude, who is, well, I won't say that because that's one of my gripes. But go ahead.
Yeah, I would say you're probably right though.
Yeah, I have a gripe that's somewhat connected to the wood chipper guy, but it's kind of a broader one.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to get into that yet, though.
Bradley?
Oh, you're go ahead. I thought you were waiting for me to get into the gripe.
I was actually.
No, Bradley, please go ahead.
Well, where are we? Well, are we on ugly now?
We are still doing the bad. You got anything else on that?
No, let's just jump into the ugly if you guys are ready.
Dig into it.
Yeah. The prosthetic head for Jason in this one. I didn't like that at all. I mean, to me, his head, his neck, his body was all the same size. It just, I don't know. It just didn't look right to me.
Yeah, I could see that. He had a weird look. When you see his face with it off, you only see it briefly. It is an odd sort of look altogether.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the hydrocephalic head though, so that's one good thing. Even when he's a kid, I don't recall him having a real deformed head when you see him for a second there at the beginning.
Yeah.
Speaking of the ugly, though, I can get into that gripe if you want me to.
Sure.
Dig in.
Speaking of ugly, nobody in this movie is ugly.
Right.
There's nobody and everybody, even the guy with the wood chipper, give him a bar of soap, he's a male model.
Right?
It's like, look, you guys, not everybody in the world looks like a male and female model.
But it's a Michael Bay film, though.
It is, and he shoots it the same way he does. If you notice, they're all dressed like Megan Fox and Transformers. They got the tight little jean shorts and the midriff shirts, and they always seem to be wearing baby oil so the light can hit them in just the right way.
Is that a trade secret?
Well, yeah, only with Michael Bay, though.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the only one that rapes the girl with his camera.
Speaking of Michael Bay, I really thought everything in this movie was going to blow up. I did. I was expecting Jason to just randomly blow up for no reason. It's Michael Bay, man.
Yeah, I would have liked that. I would have liked that better than the little tag at the end. But I'm not going to go there yet.
I do know, Bradley, you had a pretty big beef with the way the filming was shot using sepia.
Oh, yeah, all that brown. Oh, man. It just gave me a headache. and Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the same way. It was all brown.
I think that's that Daniel Pearl. I think that's his, like, quote unquote look.
Yeah.
Because all of the things he shoots, it look the same. It all looks, dirty, grimy. Everything needs to be given a good spray down.
Yeah.
Get the garden hose out.
Yeah. Everything was brown. All the blood was black. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally in like nighttime scenes or even horror films in general, most of the time they use like a blue filter. Am I correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, blue, green, red. Or if you want to do Dario Argento, all of the above.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I know that, I don't know if you guys wanted to get into, at this point, the good or the bad being the references to the other films, because, the remake is basically a mashup of the first 4 original films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you could go through some of the things that and again, it could be a good thing or a bad thing, but like the mother's head, of course, being found, like Jason coming through the window and grabbing Jared at the end is from part 4 and sort of part 3. You have like searching for the sister is the same kind of thing. The bag on his head being the reference to part 2.
Yeah.
Even like posing as the mother at the end is from part 2. So it's kind of a interesting, Jason hanging. That's what it looked like the scene in part 3 where he's hanging.
That's
So
right.
they did an interesting thing with the. I think that's the first time that was done, and anyone said anything about it. Where you would just take the originals and just mash them up and make one story out of 4 movies.
That's right. I think they were planning to have multiple sequels. I thought they said they had 3 planned or something.
That sounds about right. Yeah, which would make sense that when they just randomly threw in the tag at the end, you always have to have that set up for a sequel.
Yeah. The last jump scare.
Yeah, which that can sometimes be really irritating, just talking from the filmmaking side, because a lot of times producers will make you do that. And then they'll make you do like 3, 4, 5 of them and then test them with like teeny boppers and say, which one did the teeny boppers like the best? And then that's the one they arbitrarily tag onto the end of your movie. And I get the feeling this might have been like one of the ones the teeny boppers like the best, because the tag doesn't make any sense at the end of this movie.
Yeah. I mean, he had no reason to come back to life. I mean,
yeah, and he's just instantly back to life with the mask on, which he was separated from. It's a very odd little tag.
Yeah. You'd almost wonder if it was a dream sequence or something.
Which that would have made sense. It would even be like a throwback to part 1 if it was. Yeah. They just had her wake up in the hospital, Yeah. I might have actually liked that better, now that you mention that.
Yeah. What about you, Carl? What do you think the ugly was for you, the absolute?
For the 2009?
Yeah.
I just liking Jason as a character, as the machete wielding character that he is through the years. I didn't like the fact of seeing him running, and I don't know why that bothered me so much. It's it just doesn't fit the profile of Jason. When you think of Jason, you think of the guy knowing the woods, how to cut you off with shortcuts. And I understand that they used the tunnels in the remake and or reboot. We'll say it that way. But
it's a remake. You can call it what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a Hollywood thing, this reboot thing.
Yeah, it is.
And then they turn it into things like soft reboot, slight reboot, pre-boot. It's like Pre-boot. It's a remake. It's a remake.
Remake, yeah. But it is. It's this combination of the first X-Men films. And, I mean, as much good as there was in it, there were negative things in it. Personally, myself, I prefer the original.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, no, I'm willing to bet it's pretty much a cult, thing. Anyone that likes the series and the franchise is going to take the original over the remake.
Yeah. Well, the remake, it wasn't really well received either at first. There was pretty negative reviews about it.
Yeah, I mean, Padlicky was signed on to do another 2 films.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I remember them talking about wanting to do a sequel to that reboot, remake, pre-make,
everything.
Everything. Yeah.
But that was like Platinum Dune's thing, with the exception of the Texas Chainsaw prequel that they did. They pretty much were one and done. Like with Nightmare on Elm Street, there for a while when they rebooted that, they were like, well, this is going to be the start of a new franchise. And then,
Yeah, nobody like that.
No. And I would say that was far more derided than this film.
You guys continue talking for a second. I got to shut my door there.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead. I was wondering what that was.
Jason is loose in his house.
Oh, yeah. Look out, Carl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not the little Jason, the mini-me Jason there. It's the actual Jason is loose. When he comes back, we're going to need to check to make... Okay, he's there. Yeah. All right, are you on one piece? Because I thought that was Jason.
Actually, if it was anyone, it was Leatherface, someone outside cutting wood with a chainsaw.
It was that Mel model from the barn.
Right? I had to look out and see if Dan was here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Speaking of that male model from the barn, I think he was a pointless character, eh?
Yeah, pretty much only existed to give him to make an excuse for him to get the hockey mask.
Yeah, I mean, he could have found that anywhere.
And I did like what a big point they made of the hockey mask. You know, he picks it up and he puts it on and he looks at himself in the mirror. But in this reality, Jason would not think much of that. He would think his bag was busted, and so he just picked up this thing and put it on. But you know, for the audience's sake, you have to have that moment where he looks in the mirror. But let me say, and this doesn't really contradict the running and stuff like that, but I did like Derek Mears' physicality. I think I'm glad that they utilized him more than just to be a mannequin, because I think Derek Mears has a lot of, obviously has proven that he has a lot of talent and physical menace, and
he is a big guy.
They utilized him. They utilized him, I thought, well. You know, whether I like the makeup necessarily or not, which, you know, could have been maybe a little better. The guy beneath it, I think, is very, very good for the role.
Yeah, I agree.
His presence was good as Jason. I mean, you felt afraid of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of the old concept of him holding the girl captive?
Kind of odd. A little odd. Yeah. I thought that the Danielle Panabaker thing, though, taking her out the way they did after they set her up as being going to be the female lead, and you know she just gets skewered.
Yeah.
That was a bit of an interesting choice. I like that.
Yeah, it was random, but it fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He what was her name? What the character's name? The girl
Gemma?
that yeah.
You talking about Danielle Panabaker?
Yeah,
Or
the
the
one,
sister?
the girl that he kept, Padlicky's sister in the film.
Oh, the sister, that was Whitney. Her name, Amanda Rigetti, was the actress.
There we go. I mean, Jason looked at her and almost seen, in my opinion, almost seen his mom. Mm-hmm. And that's why he wouldn't kill her. And she looked at him after, and remember the scene where she looks at him and she's like, it's okay, you can stop now. And that's when Padlicky clamps on I think it was a bear trap.
Yeah, bear trap, yeah.
And wraps it into the wood chipper, and it hauls him on and it kills him. Or supposedly.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. They had to make sure that they showed it just got the top of his head.
Yeah. But I did find one thing about that when me and Bradley did a rewatch on it. His head went in, and the lack of blood in that, I was like, can you really imagine a wood chipper chipping away at the top of your skull and brain, and there are no splats?
They had no money left or something.
Well,
it was probably one of those producer things where it's like, could we just make it a flesh wound? And they're like, it's a wood chipper.
Right?
Like, yeah, but we need him to come back.
Yeah, we'll just get a Band-Aid and see what happens.
That's right. Just, I would have loved it if his head just went in there and just got completely annihilated. But then again, they'd never want to do that, because then that eliminates the possibility of a sequel if you wanted to. I mean, honestly, if Platinum Dunes knew they were just going to do one, which they did across the board, with the exception, obviously, later with The Purge and the Texas Chainsaw, they did the prequel. I would have just said, let's do our one, and at the end, let's just give it a good conclusion.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing these sorts of movies lack, slasher movies, is that you can never get a good resolution, because there always has to be, the bullshit tag at the end.
Yeah, and the way it is now, we're left with the unfinished story that we're never going to see.
Right, yeah. It would have just been better had they obliterated his head, and then, okay, this is over. That's it. The one reboot is done. And then you can do another franchise later if you want to.
Exactly.
Which you're eventually going to do anyway, so...
I would imagine at some point they'll do a part 2 follow-up to it.
You think to this one, or you think they'll reboot the whole thing? I think they'll reboot the whole thing, actually.
Yeah, I think Michael Bay would just come on board and they'll pick up where they left off and do a part 2.
Blow up more shit.
Yeah. Assault more women with his cameras.
Maybe Megan Fox can be his final girl.
Right. Do we have any comparables between the two guys?
You mean between the two Jasons, or
no, between the two films actually.
Between the two films
and the 1980.
It's kind of hard because since the remake is it has so little from only the first one. it's kind of hard to compare it. Had it been a remake of just the first one, it probably would be easier for me to compare it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would almost have to compare it to the first four.
Yeah, because you're really only given the first 2 minutes of the movie, which was anything to compare to the original.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that one little credit scene, that was the original.
Yeah. LC, you got anything that you'd like to bring up there about either of the films?
Well, I did. I wanted to mention our mutual friend, Mr. Zach Myers. He, part 3 of the original Friday. I had never seen that in 3D.
Okay.
And I got a DVD of it. It's in 3D mode, but they didn't give me the glasses. So Zach was kind enough to send me some 3D glasses. So I just saw that in 3D. And I must say it's a lot better. Because of the 3 movies that the reboot references, the third one is by far my least favorite. And I don't, like I say, other than Jason hanging in the barn at the end of the reboot, remake, pre-make, there's really no references to that third film. I mean, he finds a hockey mask, but aside from that, that was the one movie they didn't seem to reference. But I can say that movie's a little better in 3D. Other than that, yeah, like I say, it's kind of hard for me to reference the remake to specifically the first one. I love the first one. To me, that's like a warm blanket from my childhood. You can pop on that first movie and sleep like a baby. Big smile on my face.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously the original is always going to be my preferred of the two that we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
Bradley?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I rewatched the 09 version, but actually before I rewatched it, in my mind it was a lot better than what it was. So then when I watched it, I was so disappointed, and I was like, well, how am I going to have a lot of good to say about this movie? I had to dig down deep to find good things to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to sometimes compliment a movie too much when you literally have a character run through a stream, drop a weapon, and then go, "Where are you, gun?" I mean,
I forgot about that.
If you have a character drop a weapon in a mud puddle and then ask the mud puddle where the gun is,
over here.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And there were a lot of things in the remake that were like that, in my opinion. There were a lot of that wasn't in the original. In the remake, you had a lot of little lines that were obviously for the audience. They're like, "See, you're gonna have to like these characters because they're just like you," some of the little asides that they said and some of the jokes and obviously smoking a bong and, doing the shots and everything. It's like, I think they went a little overboard with trying to make those male and female models relatable to everybody, because that can get a little bit cringy.
Yeah, it's like, oh, look, they're young. They're like you. You got to like them.
That's right. And you fit into this part that this guy is, and you're kind of like this guy, rather than them just being, characters.
It's like every stereotype has a character in this movie.
That's right. There's something for everyone in this movie.
Yeah.
That's true.
Allegedly.
The one thing I did like about the 09, all the franchise, at least one character in every part of the franchise, they have this comic relief character. Most of the time, 99% of the time, they irritate the life out of me. But I loved Chewie. I did. I really did. Yu's character in the film, I found spot on for that comic relief character. He done a fabulous job.
I couldn't wait for him to get killed off.
No?
I couldn't wait. He reminds me of somebody I know.
Yeah, enough said.
Right. No, I thought he'd done a marvelous job. No.
Yeah, I agree. I think he did a good job for what he was asked to do, which was essentially be the comic relief. I mean,
yes, that
was his whole function in the story, was to go to the shed and comment on things and be funny about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, who gets loaded and stoned and randomly goes to a shed and plays with hockey stuff?
Yeah.
Right, then the guy wearing a hockey mask shows up, and you just turn around and ask him if he's looking for this, and you're holding his hand, right?
Right. Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but that is a classic horror movie slasher trope too, because I've never walked into a room, saw a bunch of things, and then walked around trying to entertain all these inanimate objects by talking about them. You know, I've never just walked around and just started a comedy routine in a woodshed.
No.
But if you're in a horror movie, you know.
And was there a cat jump scare in this movie? I can't remember. They usually has them in there because I was a cat.
I can't remember.
I don't think there was in this one, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, you got anything else, Elsie?
No, man. But I would say, you know, if you wanted to do like a final verdict type deal, the first one is classic. Always got to stick with that.
Yeah.
The remake is very watchable. I've seen a lot worse. But yeah, I mean, I'll stick to the original.
Yeah, I found the original just had more class.
Yeah.
The way it pulled things off. I don't know. The actors, the acting wasn't as good as the modern version, but it just held a lot better than the new one do. Like I can see me rewatching the old one or the original one over and over and over, whereas the 09 version I'll watch that once every 10 years, if that.
I'll say it this way. For being dealt the cards with that terrible prosthetic head in the 09, Derek, you done fabulous for Jason. The story writing a little bit could have been done better. The concept was decent. And with that being said, I will still hold to the original being my favorite.
Yes.
And here's to Derek returning if they ever do any more. I'd love to see him as the character again.
As would I. I would too.
Definitely. Hopefully we do.
Another little thing too, we might do a future episode on is something Bradley's taken a little shine into there lately, the Swamp Thing.
Oh, the TV show now? The new one? I'll have to watch that. I haven't seen any yet.
Oh,
yeah, I haven't either, and Bradley tells me he's ready.
I'm halfway through.
Yeah,
it's good.
And Derek does an awesome job in that.
Yeah,
I love the old comic, especially the Alan Moore comic books from the 80s of Swamp Thing. Great stuff.
There we go.
Yeah, I found the new show was just gory, beautiful masterpiece. This is all I can say about it. I'm sad to see it canceled. It could have been good.
That's a shame. I'll have to check it out though.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a future episode, gentlemen.
Yeah,
sure.
Could be.
There we go.
Yep. Perfect.
All right. Well, if that's it, Brad, you want to take it home?
Yep. All right, folks. That's a wrap. If you enjoyed the content we had on this episode, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. And also, I want to thank LC Holt for being our guest on the show today. We really appreciate it. And also, guys, check out LC's channel here on YouTube. And thanks for watching.